such a name, such beauty. I will make you my wife." The crowd gasped, but Ijoma only laughed. A quiet, haunting sound that seemed to mock and seduce at the same time. "Do not amuse me, your majesty," she said with a tilt of her head. "I am not that cheap. Anyone who wants me must earn me. I will marry only the man who impresses me the most." A very, very long time ago, in the eastern parts of Nigeria, there lived a kingdom so large, so feared, and so unfortunate. This kingdom was called Amudo. Now, besties, don't be fooled by the name. Amudo sounded like the kind of place where the birds sang in harmony and the rivers danced in the moonlight. But in reality, even the birds avoided Amudo because hunger had turned them into soup. The rivers, which used to yield fish in its bounty, now looked dry and empty, and the trees totally depressed. Why? Because of one man, King Ezenwa. King Ezenwa, the ruler of Amudo, was not your typical king. He didn't walk with the grace of a royal or speak with the wisdom of a wise man. No, his footsteps thundered like a greedy man chasing after coins, and his voice always barking out commands like someone who hadn't eaten, even though his palace kitchen never ran out of food. The man was loaded. I mean, he was rich beyond reasoning. He had gold, lands, cows, goats, and camels. But still, it wasn't enough. His appetite for wealth was like a bottomless pit. If money were food, Ezenwa would still lick the pot and ask for more. He was a kind of king who took pleasure in watching his villagers suffer. He seized and sold the villagers' lands, took over the farmlands of those who dared to question his high taxes, sent his guards to snatch baskets of pepper from old women returning from the markets, and demand tributes of palm oil from widows who barely had food to eat. When the people cried, he simply laughed. Well, not out loud, but with the kind of wicked smirk that made you want to slap sense into the royal crown. And then, there were his chiefs. The pot-bellied disgrace to councilship. They looked like walking sacks of gari. These men surrounded the king like mosquitoes at night, useless but loyal. Their mouths were always shining from the king's oily stew, and their hearts were as heavy as their pockets. Not one of them ever questioned the king's actions. Why would they? Their bellies were full. Their wives had wrappers for every market day, and their children well-fed and spoiled silly. As far as they were concerned, King Ezenwa was always right, even when he was wrong with full confidence. The people of Amudo, on the other hand, were not living. They were surviving, taxed until their roofs collapsed and their stomachs folded like wrappers in Hamatan. Their voices were lost in pain. Their backs bent from carrying the burden of a greedy king, while their eyes searched the skies for a miracle. Meanwhile, far from the towering palace and its oily-chested chiefs, near the forgotten edge of the kingdom stood an old, tiny, stubborn hut that had refused to fall. It was held together by hope, mud, and the grace of the gods. Inside this humble dwelling lived a man named Omenukor. Omenukor was a poor but kind-hearted man with weathered palms and sun-kissed skin. When he was barely a boy, life had slapped him into manhood. His father died and left him the family treasure, one sad piece of dry cracked land that looked like it was cursed by 3 angry ancestors. Year after year, Omenukor planted on that land only for the crops to rise like they remembered they had somewhere else to be, and then disappear. The land was as empty as a desert. Still, Omenukor cherished it like a jewel. Not because it was useful, but because it was the only thing he could call his own. But he couldn't just sit and fold his hands. Since his own land had refused to cooperate, Omenukor became a laborer. He moved from farm to farm, offering his strengths to those with land and ego. Every morning, before the cock finished the second crow, he was out, carrying hoes heavier than his dreams, working until his bones sang lullabies. In return, he got a few tubers of yam, some cassava, and just enough coins to confuse his pockets and not fill them. But despite the hard life, Omenukor wore a smile like a badge, and that smile, it came from one person, Nkem, his wife. Ah! Nkem. That woman was the kind of beauty that didn't need jewelry or expensive wrappers. Her beauty started from the heart and spilled out through her laughter. She was joy in human form, the kind of woman who could turn boiled yam and palm oil into a 5-star meal just by the way she served it. No matter how little they had, she always found a reason to be happy. Even when the roof leaked while it rained, Nkem would smile at her worried husband and say, "At least the rain did not wash us away." She was his peace, his best friend, his everything. Their love wasn't loud, but it was deep. The kind that didn't need to be shown off at the village square. They shared their little poor meals like it was a royal feast, often dancing barefoot in the sand, laughing like 2 drunk lovers without a care in the world whenever the moon lit up the sky in its glory. And even as Nkem's belly began to grow round and full like a harvest moon, her eyes never lost that light of hope. Yes, they were poor, but in their little hut on the edge of Amudu, they had something many wealthy homes didn't have: pure, unshaken love. One bright morning, while the people of Amudu were busy chasing hunger and patching their leaking roofs, a strange sight swept through the village gates. Fine horses with shiny coats, hooves clicking like royalty, and riders dressed like men who had never known suffering. They were wealthy merchants from a faraway land, with thick accents, adorned in rich attires that only royalties wore. They had the kind of presence that made the villagers stop and whisper, "Who are these men?" Their eyes darted sharply as they moved, scanning the land like hawks looking for prey. Their hands clutched heavy bags that jingled with the sweet sound of gold coins, enough to make even a monk consider sin. But they didn't come just to show off. They came for business. After roaming through Amudu, looking so tired and disappointed, they stumbled upon something strange and unexpected. An abandoned, cracked piece of land near the edge of the kingdom. In this land that looked so useless, they noticed something that drew their attention. That land looked like a desert. Like no single plant grew in it. And from their experience as wide travelers, that could only mean one thing: So they began to dig and dig. Alas, their instincts were right. They found gold, real gold. Excited, they asked around for the owner of the land, expecting it to belong to some chief or maybe a wealthy king. But no, to their shock and mild amusement, the land belonged to a poor man named Omenukor. Omenukor, one of them repeated, eyebrows raised. Who names a poor man after wealth? Another merchant laughed. Maybe his name is a prophecy. Let us find him. That man is sitting on fortune and chewing hardship. Words travel faster than Harmattan fire in dry grass. And before the merchants could finish tightening their horse saddles to head to Omenukor's little hut, the news had reached the palace. Why? Because King Ezenwa had ears planted everywhere. He summoned the merchants at once. Soon, they stood before him, bowing low, as his guards stood around them, looking important for no reason. "I hear," the king began, his voice echoing through the great hall, "that you came into my kingdom to seek trade opportunities, but failed to show your miserable faces before the king of this great kingdom." Before sniffing around like rats, he thundered angrily, slamming his staff on the floor. The merchants flinched. "Forgive us, your majesty," they apologized, bowing down respectfully. "We didn't know that such a law existed in this land, but we meant no disrespect." King Ezenwa let out a deep breath, stroking his beard, as though contemplating whether to behead them or offer them suya. Then he sat back and waved a royal hand. "I see that you are peaceful men. I, King Ezenwa the Great, welcome men of great wealth. Men with good intentions." He offered them seats, padded with lion skin, and poured them very sweet wine. "Now," the king said with a smile faker than a borrowed wristwatch, "tell me, what have you found?" One of the merchants leaned forward, his voice smooth. "Your Majesty, we found gold buried beneath a piece of land. The villagers say it belongs to a man, a poor man named Omenukor. If he gives us access, we are ready to pay him richly and make him so wealthy that his generation would never be poor." The king's eyes gleamed. "Gold, you say?" "Yes, your majesty. Enough to feed 10 kingdoms." Chief Nnanna, the oldest and most foolish of the king's advisors, burst into laughter. "I can't believe that fool Omenukor is squatting on treasure, always working like a horse and eating garri without sugar." The king smirked, his mind already building a very big iron barn in the palace and stacking it with mountains of gold. His heart thumped like royal drums as his eyes rolled with greed. This was his moment. "Gold, enough to feed 10 kingdoms, you say?" he repeated slowly, grinning like a vulture that just spotted a dying animal. He leaned forward, eyes sharp with greed. "That land shall be yours," he said. "Just leave it to me." That very evening, Omenukor received a message that chilled his heart. He was being summoned to the palace. He arrived in silence, his hands trembling faintly, though he tried to appear calm. His clothes were clean but old, and his bare feet left quiet prints on the palace floor as he stepped into the great hall. He bowed low before the king. "Omenukor," King Ezenwa began, his lips stretched into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I have heard many things about you. how you work hard, how you struggle, and yet how little you have to show for it. A man of effort, but not of reward. It touches me deeply. Omenukor remained still, listening. I also hear, the king continued, his voice thick with false compassion, that you own a miserable piece of land that has brought you nothing but hardship. It pains me to see such suffering in this kingdom. So today, as a gesture of goodwill, I offer to buy the land from you. Name your price, and I shall relieve you of the burden of poverty. Omenukor slowly lifted his eyes, surprised by the king's sudden interest. My king, he said quietly, I thank you for your concern and your kind words, but I cannot make that decision now. That land may seem useless to many, but to me it means everything. I must return home and discuss this with my wife. He bowed again. Omenukor was no fool. He had heard whispers from the villagers that some wealthy strangers had found something that could make him so wealthy in his seemingly useless piece of land. Even though he didn't know what it was, he knew the game Ezenwa was about to play. The king couldn't hide his anger as he breathed heavily, even though he tried so hard to mask it with a smile. He had expected Omenukor to jump at his offer without wasting time, but instead, the poor man had requested to go home and think about it. Don't be a foolish man, he said finally to Omenukor. This offer won't last forever, and I hope to see you by tomorrow morning. I am sorry, my king, but I would need at least 3 days to think about it and get back to you, he said, bowing slightly. His guts angered Ezenwa. What a proud poor man, he thought as he gritted his teeth. This man should not joke with this chance of mine to make money. 3 days, he said finally. You have 3 days. That night, as Omenukor sat down with his wife Nkem, their house was unusually quiet. He had shared the story of his encounter with the king. She was just as stunned as he was. I can't believe how greedy and wicked Ezenwa could be, Omenukor said, shaking his head. He indeed takes everyone in this village for a fool. But I won't let him. That land is our ticket out of poverty forever. And I won't let him take it away from us. I will protect it, even with the last drop of my blood. Mbanu, my husband, Nkem cried sharply. Don't talk about blood. No one is dying in this house. But please, be careful. You know what Ezenwa is capable of. He is a dangerous man. Omenukor's eyes darkened. Let him come, he said quietly. I am not afraid of him. My answer will remain no. That land is not for sale. He has suddenly become kind. Where was he when I was a boy, alone and hungry? When my mother died because we didn't have money to buy herbs for her treatments? Where was he when I worked my fingers to the bone and returned with little? Now that fortune comes to me, he wants to steal it. He slammed his fist on the wooden stool beside him. May the gods punish him if he tries it. Nkem watched her husband in silence. She had never seen him so angry, so broken, yet so determined. 3 days later, the second summons came. Omenukor entered the palace again, but this time his steps were steadier. The king greeted him with the same hollow smile. I know you are a wise man, Ezenwa began, his voice dripping with sweetness. So tell me, how much coins must I give you to make you hand over that land? Omenukor stood tall. Your Majesty, I have thought about this deeply. I appreciate your interest, but I must decline. That land is all I have, and before my father died, I gave him my word. I will never let it go. A murmur rippled through the chamber. One of the chiefs, Okeke, scoffed aloud. Foolishness! You cling to dry soil, while your wife starves beside you. If your father can hear you, I'm sure he will be weeping in his grave. Without due respect, sir, Omenukor said, bowing slightly again. My wife is with child. She is in her last days, as a matter of fact, and I must return home to her. I cannot sell that land. He turned and took his leave. The king's fingers curled tightly around the head of his staff. He watched, teeth clenched, as Omenukor walked out of the palace without a backward glance. As soon as the door closed behind him, the king rose in fury. Fool! Fool! He shouted. He dares to defy me. That land will be mine. I don't care what it takes. I, Ezenwa, must have it. The chiefs nodded in silence. There were no need for more words. That night, beneath the moonless sky, they plotted. A few coins changed hands, and a shadow began to move through the village. At midnight, while Amudo slept under a thick blanket of silence, a dreadful sound shattered the stillness. Inside a small hut at the edge of the kingdom, Omenukor and his wife were fast asleep, coiled against the cold on their wooden bed. But the moment the door burst open with a deafening crash, they bolted upright in shock. 3 dark figures stood before them, armed and merciless, their faces hidden in the shadows. What have we done? Omenukor cried, quickly shielding his wife with his body. His voice shook, but he stood firm as he searched their faces. He knew they had come for him. Please, don't hurt her. Don't touch her, he begged, his eyes wide with terror. Kill me instead. She is carrying a gunshot caught him short before he finished his last sentence. It ripped through the air and buried itself in his chest. Omenukor gasped and collapsed into Nkem's arms, blood soaking through his wrapper as his body trembled one last time. No! Nkem screamed, a sound so raw, so piercing that it seemed to shake the ground beneath her. Please, please, no! Don't leave me! Omenukor, stay with me! Please stay with me! She wept, her voice cracking as she held his lifeless body tightly, rocking back and forth in disbelief. The 3 men were silent. Their mission was complete. Without another word, they turned and vanished into the shadows from which they came. Moments later, the villagers rushed down, drawn by Nkem's heart-wrenching screams. They arrived only to find her on the floor, clutching her husband's bloodied body, her wrapper soaked with sorrow, her hands trembling. Amudo! She wailed, her voice raw with grief. Amudo! They have plucked the one eye I used to see. They have taken the soul from my body. They have made my unborn child fatherless. Omenukor is gone. They took him from me.
Ezenwa took him from me.
No one dared to speak. Her words cut through the hearts of everyone present. Some knew the truth, even without evidence, but they dared not admit it. They were too scared for their own lives. They gathered around her, trying to console her, but Nkem could not be consoled. Omenukor had been her anchor, her joy, her light in the darkness. How does one heal from watching the man you love being murdered before your eyes? By daybreak, the entire Amudo village was silenced and thrown into mourning. Omenukor's body was laid to rest beneath the shade of the mango tree behind his hut. His grave was dug by friends who had no words for their grief. People wept quietly. Omenukor was a man loved by his people. But as the villagers mourned and prayed for justice from the gods, their so-called king feasted. In the palace, King Ezen was surrounded by his chiefs, poured wine with one hand and counted gold with the other. The merchants sat before him, signing documents and handing over bag after bag of shining coins in exchange for the land. They all laughed loudly as they made a toast to their newly found wealth. Days passed, but Nkem's mourning did not fade. She sat for hours in their empty hut, staring at the wall. Omenukor's clothes pressed to her chest. Her eyes were hollow, her heart broken beyond repair. She had not eaten. She had not spoken to anyone. She had only wept. Until one evening, something inside her snapped. She stood up and ran barefooted, her wrapper loose, her face streaked with dry tears to Akoko, the forbidden forest feared by all of Amudu. Akoko was no ordinary place. It was said to be ruled by a goddess older than memory, a spirit named Omaja, who dwelled deep in the dark hidden river in the forest. No one dared go near, no one who valued their life. But Nkem was done valuing hers. She had heard how powerful and destructive the goddess was, and she was ready to do whatever it took to get revenge. She moved through the tangled trees without fear, her swollen belly heavy, her legs weak, but her soul aflame with grief. At last, she reached the river. She stepped into the cold currents, her tears flowing freely as it joined the water. And then, a scream, not just from her lips, but from her very soul, escaped from her mouth. Omaja! Her voice rang through the forest like thunder, cracking across the sky. Suddenly, the river stirred. Waves rose and fell, and a shadow slittered beneath the surface. The air thickened, and then she came. From the heart of the river rose a figure, half human, half serpent. Her skin shimmered with scales, her hair long and black like the night, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. Who dares call the river with such pain? She asked, her voice low and ancient, filled with power. Nkem fell to her knees. My name is Nkem, she sobbed. They killed him. They killed my Omenukor, my only love, my husband. They left me with nothing but this child in my womb. That's King Ezenwa and his wicked chiefs did this. They took it from me. I want revenge. I want justice. Omaja, I want
Revenge!
The goddess studied her quietly. The surface of the water rippled with her breath. I feel your pain, woman, Omaja said. And I see the fire of vengeance burning in your spirit. I can give you what you seek. I can make them fall to their knees. I will sip their blood and drag their souls to the deep. Their end will be slow and cruel. Nkem stared at her with desperate hope. But Omaja said slowly, you have to pay a price. Your life. Nkem, broken and fearless, did not hesitate. I don't care if I must die, but I am with child. Let me bring this child into the world first. Let my little baby know the first love of a mother. Omaja nodded slowly. You don't need to worry about her. I will take care of her as if she were my own. Before Nkem could speak further, she reached out. Thunder cracked across the sky. Nkem's body burnt in pain as labor overtook her. Right there, on the muddy bank of the sacred river, she groaned and cried as her child came into the world. By midday, the storm had passed, and in her arms lay a girl, a child with eyes like hailstones. Her voice trembled as she held the baby one last time. Her name is Ijeoma, she whispered, and with her final breath, Nkem was gone. Omaja took the baby gently into her arms, her expression unreadable. Then, without a sound, she vanished beneath the surface of the river, carrying the child into the dark ancient depths of the spirit realm. The villagers noticed Nkem's absence first with quiet whispers, then with worry. Days passed. The once hopeful faces of those who had consoled Nkem turned to confusion. No single sound had been heard from her hut. Nkem has not been seen since the burial, someone said. Are you even sure that woman is still alive? Another added. Maybe she has died in her hut without anyone knowing. Fear rose in their hearts, and that was how the search for Nkem began. Of course, she wasn't in her hut, so they searched from village to village, from the village square to the lonely riverbank, from her mother's people to her friends. But it was as though the earth had swallowed her whole. Not even her footprints were found, and no one could tell her whereabouts. Eventually, they gave up. But time, the cruel healer, marched on. The sun rose and fell over the village. Seasons changed, and slowly but painfully, Omenukor and Nkem became memories, then echoes, then nothing. Their compound, once warm with laughter and soft dance steps, became overgrown with weeds. The walls cracked. Lizards claimed the windows. Snakes made nests where lovers once lay. In time, it became part of the forest, swallowed whole, just like their story. But while Amudu slept in ignorance, far away beneath the sacred river, past the living world and deep into the undercurrents of forgotten gods, someone remembered. Omaja did not forget. There, in the cool eternal twilight, beneath the water's surface, she raised a child who belonged to no one but grief. A child who had never known a cradle, only prophecy. Her name was Ijeoma. From the moment she took her first breath, her fate had been sealed. You are the answer, Omaja would whisper, her voice echoing across water and stone. You are the blade your mother begged for. You are the hunger that will devour the greedy. You are revenge wrapped in skin. Each night, while other children in the world above were sung to sleep with lullabies, Ijoma drifted to the sound of a different melody. Humans are cruel, Omaja would hiss into her ears. So cruel. They stole your life from you before you even opened your eyes to it. You should be walking the land with your mother and father, laughing, dreaming, and free like other children. But no, their greed took it all away from you. They killed your father without mercy. And as if that wasn't enough, they took your mother's life, forcing them into an early grave. The words burned into little Ijeoma's heart like fire into a clay. You must never trust them. You must feed them their own flesh as food, Omaja would grow, her eyes blazing with anger. Even in her sleep, Ijoma heard Omaja's voice. Even in her dreams, her soul boiled. Her nights were filled with screams, echoed through the sacred waters, as nightmares tore through her mind. Visions of blood, of betrayal, of loss. And when she woke up trembling, her heart pounding with fear, Omaja was there. The goddess would seize her chin, her eyes fierce and her lips tight. No! She would snap. You cannot be weak. You cannot be a coward. You mustn't allow fear to rule over your heart. Fear will stop you. And you can't let this mission fail. This is the only thing your mother has asked of you. Their death cannot be a waste. Sometimes she would hit her chest with the flat of her palm and hold Ijeoma's ear close. You think crying will bring them back? You think the king will give back what he stole just because you scream? No. You must become something he cannot fight. You must become his nightmare. So, Ijoma grew, not just in beauty, but in power. Her heart beat with fury every day, and her blood bubbled with revenge. Her beauty was haunting, her eyes deep pools of mystery, her voice soft but unsettling, like the whisper of a serpent in tall grass. She did not laugh. She did not ask questions. She listened. She trained. She sharpened herself like a weapon. Omaja watched with pride, smiling each time she caught the girl staring at the surface of the river with burning eyes. She was becoming exactly what she needed, a monster raised by grief. And so, the river kept its promise. In silence and shadow, it raised the child into a curse born of pain, a curse born of blood. And she was Ijoma, the girl cloaked in beauty, cradled by vengeance, destined to return to Amudu like a sweet breeze before a thunderstorm, and shake it to his very bones. Years later, Ijoma had grown into a maiden so breathtaking that her mere presence silenced winds. Her eyes shimmered like the river that birthed her. Her voice laced with charm, and her skin as smooth as moon-polished stones. Omaja had molded her into a weapon, so beautiful, yet dangerous and full of vengeance. "You are ready now," Omaja said to her one night, with a satisfied smile of a proud mother. Go to the land of Amudo. Seek out the king, the chiefs, and all those who bath in your parents' stolen blood, and unleash fury on them, one by one. Leave no one out, including their sons and daughters. Wipe out their blood entirely. And do not forget the instructions I have given to you. I will, mother, Ijoma replied with a cold smile, bowing slightly. I will make them pay for all the pain they have caused. They will regret the day they breathed while my parents bled. With a gentle touch to her forehead, Omaja whispered incantations, filling her with immense powers. A wild wind came and swept Ijoma out of the depths of the river, and her feet touched the land of Amudo for the first time since she had been born. She walked into the village like a whisper in the dark, draped in a plain clothes and a veil of silence. Ijoma, now fully grown, returned to the land that had murdered her name before it was even spoken. She walked under the cover of the night, barefoot, on the very soil that soaked her father's blood. No one noticed her, no one saw her, and that was exactly how she wanted it. She found an abandoned hut near the edge of the village, half swallowed by weeds and cobwebs. Its mud walls cracked like old secrets. It once belonged to an old herbalist who vanished many months ago. It was quiet, forgotten, and perfect. She dusted off the wooden bed, sat quietly and smiled. She had carefully sketched out her plans. She wasn't here to play, and tomorrow the first stone would be thrown. Amudo was not ready, not for her, not for what was coming. The elders used to say that a leopard never changes its spots. And in the case of King Ezenwa, now known by his official royal title, Ezudo the Great Consumer, they were painfully right, though his beard had grown grey and his steps slower. His greed had only grown sharper with age. Time had even made him more arrogant and shameless. His belly jiggled like a sack of stolen pounded yam, and he laughed more now, especially when sipping wine brewed from the tears of the poor. He had even added a new skill, becoming a master at inventing reasons to celebrate. Got a new cow? Feast. New wrapper from a visiting chief? Feast. Traded 3 plots of land for gold? Big feast. The kingdom's wealth flowed like palm wine into his personal vaults. Yet, the people outside the palace gate still boiled water to trick their stomachs into thinking it was food. Now, word had just spread that he sealed another massive trade deal with foreign merchants, one that promised more wealth, more slaves, and even more land. And of course, he was throwing a feast, but not just any feast, a royal exhibition of arrogance and excess. He had sent messengers far and wide, inviting noblemen, wealthy merchants, kings, princes, and the kind of women whose beauty made even the sun pause. To King Ezudu, beauty was not just for pleasure. It was a symbol of power. A well-decorated celebration must sparkle with gold and glitter with women. The feast was set for the next day, and as the king sat on his velvet-cushioned throne that evening, he rubbed his bloated belly with pride, smiling like a satisfied pig who had stolen from every other animal in the barn. By morning, the palace court had transformed into a festival of splendor. Ribbons of red and gold fluttered from tall bamboo poles. Exotic flowers lined the walkways. Musicians tuned their instruments as the scent of roasted meat and pepper soup floated in the air like a song of its own. The drummers had started slow, but their rhythm was already pulling dancers to their feet. This was no ordinary celebration. Tables overflowed with food fit for gods: grilled bushmeat, steaming yam porridge, soups thick enough to drown sorrow. No coin had been spared. As soon as the guests began to arrive, they came with pride and pomp. Powerful men with fat purses and heavier egos, kings from distant lands, princes adorned in coral beads, wealthy merchants with hands that smelled of foreign goods, and of course, their companions, women, so stunning that the palace guards nearly dropped their spears. Laughter echoed through the courtyard as he watched his guests mingle, dance, and gorge themselves. King Ezudo leaned back on his throne, satisfied. To him, this wasn't just a celebration. It was a grand display of his wealth, a declaration that he, the king of Amudo, had won. And of course, he always wins. What he didn't know was that the show was just beginning. The celebration was in full swing. Laughter bubbled like palm wine in fresh calabashes. Drums beat with joyful thunder, and then the air shifted. First, it was a hush, then stillness. The music faltered as if the drums themselves had forgotten their rhythm. Every head turned, slowly, instinctively, drawn to something, someone. She stepped into the courtyard like a breeze wrapped in beauty. And in that moment, the feast became hers. She moved with quiet majesty, her presence louder than any praise singer. Her skin glowed beneath the morning sun, like it had been kissed by lightning. Her face flawless, an oval canvas so perfect that the gods might have argued over who created it. Her eyes shimmered like distant blue oceans, deep and endless, and her figure crafted like a secret too sacred to speak of. Even the dancers froze. The palace guards forgot their duty. The chiefs, those round-bellied men who only ever reacted to food and money, sat up straight, jaws slack, eyes wide. She walked slowly, deliberately, her hips swaying like waves, her feet barely kissing the earth. The way her wrapper clung to her frame could raise the blood pressure of a blind man. And then, just as the king was wiping wine from his beard, his eyes fixed on her, she walked up to him. Without a word, she reached for his royal goblet and took it from his hand. The king didn't protest. He couldn't. His tongue was too heavy, his pride too stunned. The most feared man in Amudo was reduced to a wide-eyed old man sweating like a goat on Eke market day. Then, slowly, she stuck out her tongue, circling the wine goblet as if she was teasing the king, before she finally took a sip. Then, she stepped into the dance floor, as if it had waited for her all its life. Her feet moved like poetry, her waist swayed with hypnotic grace. It wasn't just a dance, it was a ritual, a performance so elegant and commanding that it made the earlier dancers look like drunken chickens. The men watched, their mouths open, breaths stolen, thoughts scattered. Some clutched their chests, others shifted uncomfortably as though they were trying to tame something inside them. One of the younger princes whispered, "I will sell my father's palace for just one glance from her." They were all totally lost. When she finally stopped, She stood before them and smiled. It wasn't just a smile, it was a challenge. The king, still panting slightly, rose from his seat like someone waking from a spell. "Tell me, beautiful one," he asked, his voice almost tender. "Who are you?" She met his eyes, unflinching, calm. "Ijoma," she said softly, "and I am a maiden of this kingdom." The king burst into laughter. "Interesting, very interesting, Ijoma. Such a name, such beauty. I will make you my wife." The crowd gasped. A royal proposal? Just like that? But Ijoma only laughed. A quiet haunting sound that seemed to mock and seduce at the same time. "Do not amuse me, your majesty," she said with a tilt of her head. "I am not that cheap. Anyone who wants me must earn me. I will marry only the man who impresses me the most." A heavy silence fell. No one had ever spoken to King Ezenwa like that. Not even his own wives dared. The king blinked, thrown off, then laughed again, this time more nervously. "Come on, Ijoma. I am wealthy, very wealthy. What more impression do you want? Tell me what you want. Gold? Silver? Land? The crown itself? I will give it to you." She stepped closer, standing so close that she could hear his breathing. "Those things," she said softly, "mean nothing to me. I seek something priceless. I seek love, real love. If anyone desires me, let him prove it." Silence cracked like thunder. She turned and pointed gently. "You'll find me at the edge of the village. That's where I live." And with a final heart-melting smile, she bowed slightly and walked away. No music followed her exit. No voice rose to question her. The courtyard remained frozen, guests staring after her, lips parted, hearts confused. The king sat back slowly and speechless. Even the wine in his goblet now tasted like water. By evening, the gossip had already spread like wildfire through Amudo. "Did you hear what's happened in the palace today? Did you see her? Do you know who she is? Where did she even come from?" Some swore she was a daughter of a river goddess. Others said she was a forgotten princess from a distant land. But those who had seen her, those who watched her dance, could only see one thing. She walks like the gods taught her, and her beauty was beautifully blinding. By dawn, madness had officially begun. Ijoma's humble hut, which once sat unnoticed at the edge of Amudo, now looked like the palace had relocated to it. Men flooded the compound like bees chasing after honey, except these were grown bees with pot bellies, grey beard and suspicious body odor. Chiefs, their sons, the king and even noblemen who had sworn off women after their third marriages. All of them stood, fidgeting, sweating, smiling like goats chewing wire. They all wanted one thing, Ijoma, and they were ready to sell their dignity for it. For the first time in Amudo's dusty history, the once loyal chiefs were prepared to go against their king. Why? Because love at first sight had reset their brains. And Ijoma, she sat like a queen on a throne made of drama, adorned in a beautiful attire, feet crossed, fan in hand, with a wicked smile plastered on her face. She had them exactly where she wanted them. Then the circus began. Old, proud, pot-bellied men, who only knew how to dine and make merry, suddenly remembered how to hustle. These were the same men who couldn't lift a broom at home. Now, they were ready to wrestle lion if it would earn them a wink. King Ezenwa came first, chest puffed, servants behind him carrying a tray of steaming pounded yam and ogbono soup made by his finest palace chef. Ijoma looked at the food and blinked slowly. Then she looked at the king and chuckled. "I'm not impressed," she said. The king frowned. "Excuse me?" "If you want to impress me," she said, stretching her legs, "then I want to watch you cook the yam yourself. Pound it, make the soup, and serve me with your royal hands." There was silence. The king blinked like he had just been slapped with a fish. "I am the king," he protested, voice rising. Ijoma shrugged. "It's obvious, but I don't care." My dearest besties. Even Amudo never believed they could ever witness this humiliating sight. That was how the mighty King Ezenwa, the one who once declared no man should look him in the eye, was reduced to grinding pepper and pounding yam in a smoky, thatched roof kitchen. His wrappers stained, his ego bruised, as he muttered curses under his breath. Yet, he couldn't give up. His desire to have her was stronger than anything, and he stirred that soup like his life depended on it. Meanwhile, the chiefs were not doing any better. You've never seen disgrace until you've seen men with stomachs the size of drums struggling to fetch water from the stream. Calabashes shaking, legs wobbling. One even collapsed on the path yelling, "My waist oh!" It's like my ancestors are calling me. But he stood up again because Ijoma must see his efforts. Another old chief, probably allergic to exercise, carried a water pot the size of his regrets, dragging his legs through the village while panting like a dog chasing its tail. The villagers watched in horror. What is happening? Is this a plague? Are these men under a spell? Some even hid their children, fearing they might catch the foolishness. But it also didn't end there. Her compound now looked like Ohia for markets. Gifts piled to the rooftop. Yams, kegs of palm wine, fowls, goats, clothes, even a chair carved from elephant tusk. Ijoma was having the best time of her life. She never knew the extent of this men's foolishness, but it really deserved an award. She would sit in front of her hut like royalty, fanning herself, while they did everything for her. Cooked, fetched water, fetched firewood, washed her clothes, swept her compound. She didn't even need to say a word for things to be done. And whenever she was bored, she gathered these men as the moon shone brighter in the sky to entertain her. The man who would eventually win my heart must be one who makes me happy. So, I want you all to dance. I am really bored and a good laugh would go a long way. At this point, besties, if you ever happen to walk past Ijoma's hut, you would collapse from laughter. These men, fathers of grown children, twisted their stiff waists like possessed grass cutters. The king wiggled his knees like a man trying to remove pepper from his trouser. One chief lost balance and fell into a firewood pile. Another tried a backflip and landed on his destiny. Ijoma laughed so hard that her fan flew from her hand. She held her belly and screamed, "What in the name of madness is this?" But they kept dancing because love, love had captured their hearts. As if that wasn't enough shame, these men took it home. They hired dancers, yes, actual dancers, to teach them new moves. They squatted, jumped, did leg work that almost sent them to their graves. Their wives stared with horror, wondering what had come over their husbands and why they had decided to make themselves a laughingstock in the village. And the village maidens, the envy in their hearts was as thick as stone. How could one maiden from nowhere just come out and turn their men into zombies? Everywhere men gathered, it was no longer about politics, war or trade. The only topic was Ijeoma. None of them cared. Their mission was clear: win her heart or die trying. Then, one evening, just as the moon rose like a gossiping eye in the sky, Ijeoma called them all together. After their very funny dance that had now become a nightly routine, she stood before them glowing like a goddess. "I have made my decision," she said, her voice smooth like melted butter. "I have found the man who makes my heart beat." Gasps flew across the yard as the men stared at each other, wondering who it was going to be. "In 4 weeks' time," she continued, "you all will gather here again. There will be a feast, and there I will reveal the one who has won my heart." Then she smiled that smile, the one that made the men forget their names, and turned away. As they staggered home, hope burning in their chest, each man whispered to himself, "It must be me." But 4 weeks suddenly felt like 4 years, and in those days, even more madness unfolded. One evening, with the sky painted in shades of gold and dusk, Ijeoma decided to take a quiet walk through Amudo, perhaps to breathe, perhaps to think, or maybe to see the kingdom she had vowed to bring to its knees. The village was calm. As she walked through a narrow bush path that led to the village market, a voice, deep, gentle and calm like a sacred breeze, cut through the air. "You walk with so much grace," it said, "just like you own the path." She stopped and turned slowly. There he was, Obinna, tall, dark, handsome, and carved like the gods used him to test their skills before creating humans. His eyes met hers, steady and unbothered by her sudden freeze. "Ijeoma," he said, his smile playful. "The paragon of beauty that has made even the king forget his throne and act like a man losing his senses. I must say, your beauty wasn't exaggerated." Ijeoma tilted her head slightly, caught off guard, but not willing to show it. "Thank you," she said with a small smile. She made to walk past, but he moved into her path again. His expression remained calm as he looked into her eyes. "You smile," he said, "and they fall to their knees because they are blind. But I see you, Ijeoma. I see through the smile. Beneath it is pain, a deep hunger for vengeance." Her heart skipped. For the first time since she came into Amudo, fear crept into her chest. Not the fear of danger, but the fear of being seen. Who was this man? Still, she lifted her chin and scoffed. "I must say, the madness in Amudo doesn't end with old men. Even the young ones are insane. Have you been drinking palm wine with Ugiri this morning?" Obinna chuckled. "I'm not a fool, Ijeoma, and you know that. I only pity you because you don't even know what you're fighting for. You are just a pawn in Omaje's hand." Her eyes flared. "You lie!" she snapped, her voice sharp with rage. "And don't you ever mention her sacred name. Ever." Obinna didn't flinch. He was calm, almost annoyingly so. "Oh, I know more than you think," he said. "Your sacred Omaja is no different from the men you fight against. If she truly cared, she wouldn't have filled your dreams with blood. She wouldn't have turned your heart into a weapon." "Shut up! You need to. I said stop!" she screamed. She stomped towards him now, fists clenched. "Who are you? And how do you know all of this?" Obinna looked at her gently, yet firmly. "I am Obinna," he said. a man blessed with wisdom of the gods, to know things, even deep things. She turned away, trembling slightly. You humans are wicked and manipulative, she muttered. I don't believe any word you say. You don't have to, he replied. But maybe you should ask your bloodthirsty Omaja who really killed your mother. That did it. Unable to stand and listen anymore, Ijoma took to her heels, running as fast as she could, her feet pounding against the earth, her heart pounding even harder. The trees blurred. The whispers in her head grew louder. Even though she didn't believe Obinna, she needed to hear Omaja say it again to her ears that all Obinna had said was a lie. She didn't stop running until she reached the dark river in the forest. Omaja! She screamed, her voice slicing through the night. The sacred river glowed immediately. The waters rippled, and from its depths, Omaja rose like a storm. Her eyes burned red with anger. I didn't raise you to become a fool, she said through clenched teeth. How dare you believe the words of that liar? You were born for vengeance. They killed your mother, they killed your father. They stole your life from you. You must not let them leave. You must finish what you started. Ijoma's voice cracked. Then tell me the truth. How did my mother die? Who killed her particularly? Omaja hissed, avoiding the question like it stung. They killed your mother. The same greedy monsters who took your father's life. Do not let a hopeless drunk man fill you with lies. You are running out of time, Ijoma. You must not fail. Ijoma stood quietly, her fist shaking. She didn't argue anymore. She took a deep breath and slowly returned back to Amudo. Yes, Omaja had denied Obinna's accusation, but deep down in her heart, if she was being honest, something doesn't add up. The seed of doubt had begun to grow. And finally, the long-awaited day arrived. The day the noblemen of Amudo had been dreaming about. The day Ijoma would choose the man who had stolen her heart, as she had promised them. Excitement filled the air. Every man believed deep down in his delusional soul that he would be the chosen one. Of course, why wouldn't he? Had he not fetched enough water to drown a goat? Had he not danced like his legs were possessed? Had he not offered all his goats and even promised his wife's wrapper just to please her? Even the king, Ezenwa, in all his royal arrogance, had already prepared a bridal chamber in the palace. As his servants dusted gold ornaments and scattered petals on the bed, the king was grinning like a love-struck ram. This wasn't his first or fourth wife. Yes, but never had any woman made his heart race like this. He was blushing like a teenage boy with a very large stomach. As soon as the sun spread its warm arms across the kingdom, the village echoed with the sound of hoofs. Horses galloped in. Men arrived, glittering in their finest attires. Wrappers starched stiff like pride, beads jingling like wedding bells. They walked in confidently, each man believing today was the day he would take home Amudo's most wanted woman. And there she was, Ijoma, dressed in the most captivating attire, her skin glowing like wet moonlight, her eyes sharp and unreadable. She sat in front of her hut like a queen, calmly fanning herself, while the entire village watched in surprise. As the men arrived, chiefs, sons of chiefs, princes, merchants, they were complete. The greedy, whose belly increased on people's tears and blood. Ijoma simply pointed to the ground. Sit, and they sat. No one asked questions, not even the king. These were men who had once ruled the land, now seated like obedient schoolboys on the bare floor, wrappers dusted, knees cracking, dignity thrown away like leftover fufu. Even King Ezenwa, with his heavy regalia, sat without arguments, because when Ijoma spoke, Amudo listened. Once all were settled, Ijoma rose slowly. She took her time very slowly. She strolled around the compound, her hips swinging with grace, her fan fluttering with elegance, giving each man a clear, tortuous view of what they had nearly killed themselves to win. Then she paused and turned. I must say, she began with a smile, this has been really entertaining. I have watched you all bend and break your backs just to win my heart. And I'm grateful. The men nodded, their hearts pounding. Ezenwa smiled, puffing his chest. That is why, she continued, her eyes glittering with mischief, I have come to a final resolution. They leaned in. I will marry all of you. What? A thunderous wave of confusion rolled through the courtyard. Jaws dropped. Eyes popped. Heads spun. For a moment, no one said a word. They just stared, blinking. Then suddenly, boom. Nonsense! King Ezenwa roared, rising to his feet like a startled goat. This is madness, absolute madness. You can't humiliate me like this. Shh. Ijoma interrupted him calmly, not even turning her head. You don't shout in my compound. This is not your palace. Here, I rule. The king's mouth opened, closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for air. Another man stood up angrily. This was not the agreement. How can we all marry one woman? I can't share my woman. Ijoma gave him a bored stare. And here I thought I was being fair. She sighed dramatically, then her face hardened. Alright then, since I can't choose, the game continues. But this time, it will be different. What else do you want from us? Chief Omenukor shouted. Do you now want us to empty the Amudo River for you? She smiled sweetly. Of course not. I am not that cheap to give you a very easy task. Her smile faded and her eyes darkened. I want war. Gasp exploded across the courtyard. This time she continued coldly. You will not win me with yams or dancing or pepper soup. This is not a war of gifts. It is a war of swords. She stepped forward, her voice echoing. Every man here will go against the other in battle, and the last man standing will win my heart. That is my final decision. The men froze. Birds stopped chirping. Even the leaves dared not rustle. Yes, it was time to pay. The same way they once sat together laughing, drinking, plotting, robbing her parents of their dignity. They would now feast on each other's blood, friend against friend, father against son, brother against brother, the king against his subordinates. The battlefield would be their justice. At this point, one would have expected these men to at least come back to their senses and see that these women meant no good for them. But just like Omaja had said, humans are evil and they don't even care who their brother or son is. As long as you stood in their way of getting what they want, they would bring you down, just like they did to her father and mother. One foolish chief with a belly so round that it had its own zip code jumped up and beat his chest like a dying gorilla. I will fight for your love, he declared, breathing heavily. I will draw my sword in your name. Tonight in the forest of Amudo, let us all battle. And may the survivor be your husband. Yes! The others echoed like cursed parrots. Ijoma beamed. Then, I will be right here waiting. As they filed out of her compound, ready to shed blood, just to win the woman who had broken their souls and stolen their sanity, she stood at the door smiling, a dark, victorious smile. Mission accomplished. Let them go and kill themselves. Now, there was one more task to complete. She turned facing the direction to the end of Amudu Kingdom. She had to find it, the egg Omaja had told her about, the one buried at the edge of the kingdom, the one that must be broken to ensure none of those foolish men ever returned, because this time, no one was coming back alive. Indeed, madness had taken permanent residence in Amudu. Abomination. Tofia, one old woman hissed, spitting into the sand with disgust, as she watched the most shocking parade the village had ever seen. There they were, the young and old noble fools of Amudu in full battle regalia, marching boldly towards the forest like heroes in a festival play gone wrong. Their swords clanked against their side. Their wrappers were tied high for combat. Their faces carried the intensity of warriors. Except these were not warriors. These were sons, fathers, uncles, chiefs, and the king himself. Ha! The gods must be out to punish these men, another woman shouted, gripping her wrapper in awe. From every corner of the village, wailing rose like smoke from burning wood. Wives screamed and pleaded, throwing themselves in front of their husbands. Chibuzo, please think of us. Think of your children. Ekenna, please, your waist is not for battle. You are too old for this. Papa Emeka, don't disgrace your ancestors. But it was like speaking to carved idols. As an African proverb would say, the death that will kill a dog will not let it perceive poison. And so, like overfed goats under a powerful spell, the men pressed on, eyes wide, hearts empty, marching towards the forest like it was a marriage, not a war. Back at the end of the village, the moon climbed higher into the sky. Ijoma stood still outside her hut, her heart strangely calm. The wind brushed her face as Omaja's voice echoed softly in her mind. It is time. She grabbed a hoe, tied her wrapper firmly, and began her journey towards the far end of Amudu, towards the place where fate was buried beneath the earth. Tonight ends it all, she whispered. But she had barely taken 10 steps further when a familiar voice cut across the darkness. You again, she snapped, turning sharply. And there stood Obinna, blocking her path like a pillar of truth that refused to move. Gone was the teasing smile, the playful eyes. His face was now carved in stone, firm and serious. You have to stop, he said, right now. Ijoma rolled her eyes and exhaled with frustration. And who exactly are you to tell me what to do? You must listen to me, Obinna said. You cannot dig out or break that egg. If you do, not only will you die, but the entire village will be thrown into darkness. Enough! Ijoma barked. You are still going about talking nonsense. Those men murdered my parents in cold blood. If you are truly as wise as you say, then you should know that breaking that egg is the only way to stop them from returning to this village. Now, get out of my way. I have work to do. But Obinna didn't flinch. Instead, he shook his head slowly, sadness in his voice. I must say, you are no different from the foolish men you seek to destroy. Blind, proud and deaf to reason. Can't you see? Omaja has been using you. You are not the avenger, you are the weapon. She fooled your mother and killed her. Then, she took you in not out of love, but to turn you into her tool of destruction. You lie! Ijoma snapped. No, I speak the truth, Obina said, eyes narrowing. She is a spirit of blood, a cursed goddess who drinks pain like palm wine. She doesn't care about you. She never did. Do you think a loving guardian will fill your sleep with cries of the dead, with nightmares soaked in blood? He stepped closer. Do you know what that egg is? The one you want to go and dig. It's her power. Long ago, Omaja was banished from this land after killing so many innocent people. She was a bloodthirsty demon. That egg was buried to keep her caged in Akoko River. Without it, she cannot leave the water. Ijoma blinked, but Obina continued, each word hitting like a hammer. If you dig out and break that egg, she will rise again. And to return to this kingdom, she needs a body. Yours. That has been the plan from the start. She raised you for this very moment, just like a fattened goat for sacrifice. Ijoma's breath hitched. You also want to know why she wants the king and those men dead? He asked. Because they betrayed her. They made a pact. Ezenwa received dark powers to dominate and rule Amudu in fear and terror. In exchange for releasing her from the river. But he broke the deal, Obina added bitterly. He took the power and locked her away. Now, she is using you to finish what he started. Ijoma stood frozen, her lips quivering. You are lying. No, Obina said gently. You've been loyal to the wrong side. Your loyalty belongs to this land and not to her. You need to stop right now. He stepped even closer and looked deep into her eyes. I won't let you destroy yourself. You are more than this mission. More than her pawn. His voice softened. You said you want the truth. Then go confront her. Challenge her with the truth you already know. Ijoma's lips trembled. You said Omaja killed my mother. Obina nodded. Yes, and now you must choose. You now hold the key to your own freedom. You may not believe me yet, but if you confront her with the truth, she will break. He looked at her one last time, firm and calm. And do not fear her. She is nothing but a coward. Tears streamed down Ijoma's face as she ran through the haunted parts of Akoko forest, her heart pounding louder than her footstep. She no longer ran like a woman on a mission. She ran like someone whose world had just shattered into pieces. Omaja! She screamed, her voice thick with fury and heartbreak. She reached the river, breathless, eyes blazing. Omaja! She screamed one final time. The river shivered, the air stiffened, and slowly, Omaja's head rose above the water, her eyes glowing like embers of 1,000 dead souls. You have not fulfilled your mission, she hissed, voice echoing with venom. I couldn't continue, Ijoma said through clenched teeth, tears still streaming. You must, Omaja thundered. Find the egg, break it, bring me back to Amudo, that land belongs to me. Ijoma froze. Obina was right. Her eyes widened in horror. What? Omaja's voice turned cold. You were never meant to avenge your parents. You were meant to avenge me. Ijoma stepped back slowly, lips quivering. What? What are you saying? You already know the truth, Ijoma. I deceived you and planted seeds of hatred and bitterness in you solely for my own desire, she sneered. Your grief made it easy. I fed you stories. Stories to shape your pain, to mold you into a weapon. I killed your mother. She burst into laughter as Ijoma stared in horror, her mouth too heavy to speak. Tears fell down her face as she glared at Omaja. With barely contained spite. How could you? How could you have done this to me? I considered you my mother. Oh, spare me. Away with such emotions, Omaja spat angrily. I owe you nothing. Your duty is to me, and your life belongs to me. No! I belong to no one, Ijoma roared, a fire bursting from her chest. You lied to me. Used me as a pawn. You killed my mother, so you could have me and mold me into your tool for revenge. Then destroy me afterwards. You're worse than the humans you hate. You won't speak to me in such a manner. I will destroy you, Omaja spat. I challenge you to do your worst, you evil bloodthirsty demon. Go ahead! Kill me, just like you did with my mother, Ijoma shouted angrily. Unknown to them, behind the thick leaves and ancient trees, Obinna crouched silently. He had followed Ijoma, sensing danger. He knew Omaja wouldn't let her go without a fight. And now, watching the confrontation unfold, he knew he couldn't stay hidden any longer. This was time to end it all. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Touch her, and I will fight you myself. Omaja hissed, her red eyes narrowing. Well, Obinna, the great son of Ezulu. I see. You have been feeding her with so many stories. Your father, I should have bathed in his blood. He's the one who sealed my fate, the one who banished me from my own territory. She raised a hand, dark mist swirling from her fingers like coiling snakes. When you see him tonight in the land of the dead, she growled, tell him I sent my best wishes. Just as she stretched her hand to strike, Ijoma leaped forward, shielding Obinna with her body, her arms wide. No! She cried. This ends now. Ijoma, move, Obinna shouted, but she stood firm. She can't take more lives. I have to stop her, she yelled, her voice shaking but loud. Omaja's laughter echoed through the trees. You think you can destroy me? You little child of grief, raised in lies. I should have killed you with your mother when I had the chance. Omaja roared and launched her dark powers, spiraling waves of fire. Ijoma stood her ground, and Obinna stepped beside her, gripping a small charm of his ancestors. Power surged through Ijoma's veins as she lifted her hands, and it glowed with fire. She clashed with Omaja, snake against flame, vengeance against truth. But the ancient spirit was stronger. Omaja laughed as they fought. You are just a child, and you forget that the power you wield belongs to me. But Obinna had come prepared. While the two forces clashed, he dropped to his knees by the edge of the river and pulled out a small white egg from his pouch. the very one his father had told him could defeat evil spirits if broken with pure intentions. With a whisper of prayer and a heart full of purpose, Obinna smashed the egg on the ground and hurled its glowing fragments into the water. The river trembled. Omaja gasped. Her flames and power faltered. Her body flickered. No! No! She shrieked. Ijoma, seizing the moment, raised both hands and screamed with every fiber of her being. A final beam of light burst from her chest, brighter than the moon, hotter than fire, and crashed into Omaja. The serpent's queen screamed for the last time. A scream that echoed from the earth to the heavens as her body twisted, turned to dust and vanished into the wind. Silence fell. Ijoma collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Obinna rushed forward, knelt beside her and pulled her into his arms. "You did it," he whispered into her hair. "We did it. Our people will breathe peace again." She sobbed into his shoulder, clinging to him. Her entire body trembled. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had lost everything, but she was finally free. As if sensing the ache in her soul, Obinna gently lifted her chin as he gazed into her eyes. "You can count on me," he said softly. "You can rest your head on my shoulder and trust me to protect you, always." As Obinna and Ijoma made their way back to Amudo, the news of the battle flew ahead of them like a wind in Harmattan. Whispers turned into loud proclamations. Before their feet touched the village square, the people had already gathered, men, women, and children, their eyes wide with wonder. When they heard the story, and that Ijoma was the daughter of the late Omenukor and Nkem, silence fell like a sacred cloth. One by one, the villagers stepped forward, heads bowed low, tears shining in their eyes. They touched her hand, her shoulder, and pulled her into warm, tight embraces. "Your father was such a good man," an elderly woman wept. "He was murdered by that evil king and his fat-throated chiefs. We wanted to help him," another added. "But even our own lives were hanging by a thread. We were afraid. We are sorry we failed you. We hope they all meet their death in that forest and never return," another woman added. That day, a fire lit in the people's hearts. Fear died and courage rose. With broomsticks, whips, and fury passed down through generations of suffering, the people chased out the remaining families of the wicked king and his chiefs. Masquerade led the charge, flogging anyone who dared resist. "If the land must be cleansed," the elders said, "then evil must be uprooted down to its last seed." Amudo rejoiced. Drums returned. The moon sang again. Obinna and Ijoma were celebrated like heroes returning from holy war. The people carried them shoulder high, dancing from village to village, singing songs that would be remembered for generations. Weeks passed, and for the first time in many years, Amudo knew peace. Contrary to everything Omaja had told her about the wickedness of humans, their deceits, their greed, Ijoma had never felt so embraced, so deeply loved, not for her beauty, not for her powers, but for simply being who she was. The villagers cleared her father's compound, once swallowed by weeds and sorrow, and built new huts with thatched roofs and warm hearts. When the final hut was completed, the people held a grand celebration, beating drums and singing songs that called her daughter of the soil. It was a homecoming she never expected, but one her soul had longed for. And there was Obinna. Their bond deepened with each passing day. He meant every word when he said, "You can count on me." And Ijoma had found comfort in that promise. From the first day Obinna had set eyes on this strange, beautiful maiden, he had been smitten by her beauty. But now that they had become close, he couldn't deny that she was such a beautiful soul, and he was right. Ijoma was just like her mother and Kem, who always found reasons to be happy. Even with all she had been through, she still shone like light in the midst of all. Seeing how tough it is for many of the villagers and how they were still trying to recover from Ezenwa's tyranny, she gathered all the treasures, jewelry, and gifts that the foolish men had once dumped at her feet during the season of madness, sold them and used the money to rebuild Amudo. The smile that lit up their faces gave her so much joy and satisfaction. Obinna watched in awe, and with every act of kindness, he fell deeper in love with her. She wasn't just beautiful, she was gold wrapped in grace. The throne, however, remained empty. Ezenwa was gone, and the people were determined not to repeat the mistake of choosing rulers who were fat in stomach but thin in wisdom. A new council of elders was formed. Wise men who were known for justice, not jollof, and together they chose Obinna to be the next king of Amudo. That evening, under a mango tree and a sky full of stars, Obinna sat with Ijoma, his eyes troubled. "I don't think I belong to the palace," he said quietly. Ijoma turned to him and smiled. "Even when you weren't king, you loved your people and risked your life to protect them. You were born for this. Your wisdom, your bravery, your gifts and kindness. That is what this kingdom needs." Obinna looked into her eyes, his voice barely a whisper. "I am not strong without you. I will only wear that crown if you will wear it beside me. Please, Ijoma, be my wife." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "You saved my life, Obinna. You saved me from a fate I never chose. You taught me how to love, you gave me peace, and you made me believe I could have joy again." She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "I never thought I could love anyone, but you made it so easy for me. I will stand by your side forever, but..." Obinna's heart jumped. "But what?" She smiled. "I will marry you, Obinna." They both burst into laughter, wrapped in each other's arms. The world, quiet for a moment. A joy too big for words settled between them. A few months later, the entire kingdom gathered beneath the rising sun. Obinna was crowned king, and his queen, none other than Ijoma. Together, they ruled Amudo with wisdom, courage, laughter, and most of all, love. And for the first time in a long time, the land rested. Hey besties, we've come to the end of this amazing story, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. It's not really been a very easy ride, but we came through. I would love you to share your thoughts in the comment section, and if you enjoy our stories and you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do not skip this video without hitting on the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post new stories. Thank you so much for all your love and support. That means so much to me. Right now, I'll have to go and see you in our next story. Bye!